are not slave right now. Oh, system need to change right now. Too much youth are put up in a grave right now. You know see the bigger it's a beers right now. After get the people are not slave right now.
That was an excerpt from a new documentary on Palestine Action, created by documentary makers Hanan Majid and Richard York of the Rainbow Collective. It's called To Kill a War Machine. It combines self-shot footage of Palestine Action's direct actions against arms manufacturers, banks and other organizations profiting from Israel's genocide in Gaza, with narration by Palestine Action members as well as interviews. Only, you may never get to see it. But that's because the documentary is made in solidarity with Palestine Action, giving its members the time and space to explain why they do what they do. Next week, Home Secretary Yvette Cooper will try to prescribe Palestine Action as a terrorist organization. If she succeeds, it will be illegal for anyone to publicly express support for the group. And it will probably be illegal to air a film like this one, which might increase support for the group as well. Effectively, a film that offers an alternative narrative to the mainstream, hysterical approach to resistance against armed companies will be silenced. That means only one side of the argument, the governments, Israel's and arms companies, will be legally permitted to be made. And if you break the law, you'll face up to 14 years in prison, massive fines, and be branded a terrorist by the state. To Kill a War Machine contains interviews with a number of people who have a profound interest in making that alternative argument, the families of the Filton 18. They're the Palestine Action members arrested in connection with a direct action on a site operated by Israeli arms company Elbit, based in Bristol. One of them is Fatima Zainab Rashwani, whose mother tells her story.
Never in my wildest imagination have I ever even thought that I would be in such a situation where my daughter is in prison. She has been arrested for an alleged action against Elbit, the Filton site, and causing allegedly damage to weapons worth around £1 million. Fatima Zainab was arrested on the 6th of August. That's one day after she turned 20. Fatima Zainab has always been an advocate for social justice. I would say that's one of her most defining character. And when the genocide started in October 2023, it had a massive impact on her. We'd be going on every single march as a family, all the national marches, the emergency protests and rallies. We would be in all of them. And I think there came a point where Fatima Zainab was getting really distressed and very helpless that, we're marching week in, week out. The government's not listening. Our voices are being unheard. And I feel this is the point where she felt that she needed to take action herself, do something more than just marching week in, week out. We're all proud of her, we're all proud of being where she is for why she is in prison, and even, when I visit her, I tell her you need to hold your head up high because you're not going to allow anyone to criminalize you because you haven't done anything that you need to be ashamed of.
Many of the 18 arrested over the Filton action were detained under terrorism law, even though they don't face terrorism charges. That, of course, will change for future activists, as well as their supporters if the Home Secretary gets her way. In this next clip, several contributors discuss what the use of terrorism legislation means.
The police response to this action has been quite extraordinary. They've used counter-terror legislation to detain and remand many of those activists in prison, and to the extent that they were moved from one site to another site without anybody who knows them being made aware that they had been moved, they were effectively rendered incommunicado from the rest of the world.
You have seen people detained on remand for a long time, but initially under counterterrorism legislation, which meant there were numerous ways in which they could have more harsh treatment justified, supposedly in a cell all day with the lights on, all night with the lights on, regular disruption.
And with Fatima Zainab, I couldn't see her until 3 weeks into her arrest. The government has abused the use of counter-terror powers to arrest the Filton group, to interrogate them day and night. And then because of the terror connection that they're now labeled with, the consequences in prison on remand have been horrific for all of them.
It is safe to say that the worst legal framework to use in such a case is the terrorism framework. The terrorism discourse has been heavily critiqued by justice theorists, by human rights lawyers, by being a way to evade the rule of law and creating an otherwise called exceptionalist space outside of the law into whatever annoys the government.
The state appears to have already been doing all it can to shut down, oppress, and intimidate Palestine action. Now, Yvette Cooper, under Prime Minister Keir Starmer, will attempt to grab more power to enforce existential restrictions on Palestine action. The UK government may regard them as terrorists, but elsewhere in the world, in the place that matters most right now, they're heroes.
And to see that recognition, through murals and painting in Palestine, and it kind of reinforces the idea that it's a collective struggle.
From the Palestinian community's perspective, the acts of Palestine action have resonated as the ultimate acts of solidarity, situating Palestine action in the belly of the beast, also it being led by people who are from the British working class, and with the clear message being equality and justice for all, resonated in a time where the feeling is that we've been left out by the world, in a time of ultimate helplessness.
It can feel like we're in a position of despair, despondence, loss. But I feel continually heartened that resistance and solidarity of Palestine has also escalated at a phenomenal level.
Now, that documentary contains so much that we couldn't show you here, including details on how the government and the Crown Prosecution Service appear to have collaborated with the Israeli and other weapon companies in the UK. I was joined by the filmmakers behind it, Hanan Majid and Richard York of the Rainbow Collective, earlier today.
Me and Richard have been making documentaries together for 20 years now on social justice and human rights issues. And we've been wanting to make a documentary about Palestine for many years, but we only wanted to make a documentary that we felt would be the type of documentary only we can make, just because there are so many great filmmakers out there doing documentaries from Palestine, and especially during the genocide. And if we want to add to that, we want to make sure the contribution is something that only we can do. And so when the opportunity came to make this documentary, we took it because we knew we'd be able to make this from our history of making documentaries with activists and campaigners. We made documentaries in Bangladesh with trade unions while they were illegal at the time. And, we're able to make documentaries that look at what they're doing, highlight what they're doing, but also be independent at the same time.
Yeah, I'd also say that the idea of producing a film where the primary content is shot by the activists on the ground is something that we've been investigating for a few years now. Our background was in more traditional observational documentary on issues of usually like people campaigning, people fighting for social justice in the UK and around the world. And we feel the way that the world is now, even like, I guess 5-6 years ago, we started to look more at how can we create documentaries which have compelling narratives where the footage isn't shot. The majority of the footage of the actions, for example, is not shot by filmmakers from outside, but is shot by activists on the ground. So that was the process, was the footage which had been shot, live streamed as part of those actions over the last 5 years. We then took that kind of cachet of material that had been live streamed of the actions and combined it with interviews, which we feel those interviews bring the film to life because I guess of the trust that the participants had in us to represent them honestly and fairly, and to try and put out there the perspective that they wanted to share.
We've been making campaign films, short like documentaries with groups like Campaign Against the Arms Trade. And, we've been looking at the, we used to do all the videos for the Stop the Arms Fair campaigns. We used to do the videos for the Stop Arming Israel campaign, Stop Arming Saudi campaign. So we have a long history of looking at the weapons industry and highlighting the fact that there's a huge industry where weapons are being made in this country and then they're being used in places like Palestine or Yemen or other places where there's wars. So this is something that we've had a long background in as well before we came to this point of making this film.
Yeah, and a part of the documentary is about how far the state, and including this Labour government, will go to protect the arms companies in Britain, the arms industry more broadly. We're about to see Yvette Cooper going even further and potentially prescribing Palestine Action as a terrorist organisation. What do you make of this kind of escalation of this conflict between activist organisations and the government?
I think there's other people who can speak better about the ways that it's going to curtail the freedom of protest. Like, obviously, it's a massive. It's like we'd see it as an egregious abuse of power by the state to see Palestine Action being put on a list that contain, like, I don't know, it's everyone else on there. They're armed groups. They're groups that are calling for violence. It's not a list for non-violent protest organizations. How that's going to impact the right to protest is going to have huge ramifications, which there's other people much better to talk about than us. How it affects us is looking at the kind of the knock-on effect a bit down the chain. So if it becomes illegal for Palestine Action to even exist, right? It becomes illegal for people to become a member of Palestine Action, but it's also illegal for people to show support then for Palestine Action. But there's a grey area there, because what about journalism which expresses solidarity with Palestine Action, for example? What about editorials that express it? What about even an objective news article, but which doesn't actively condemn Palestine Action? Does this too become illegal? Is every tweet which has been liked or reshared, is every Instagram post out there where someone has said, right, I agree, if they carry on doing that, if they don't take those down, is that an illegal act? And this is being rushed through. This is going through a kind of at lightning speed. And I don't even think that the people out there who are maybe sharing posts, who are sharing stuff on social media, like, how are they meant to know now what that change in law is going to mean? Are they going to be criminally liable of supporting a terrorist organization? You know, this is crazy. I mean, for us then, making an independent documentary, and coming from a background of having solidarity with protest movements, having solidarity with movements against the arms trade, having solidarity with direct action protest groups, if we make an independent documentary, which is, you know, can be read as being in solidarity with that or not condemning that, does that mean that we're then breaking the law? Like, we made it. These laws cannot be applied retrospectively, right? So we made the film. Before that, we've had it certified by the BBFC, the British Board of Film Classification. It's been watched by this kind of like arm's length government organization. It says, yeah, that film's good to go. It was made before Yvette Cooper kicked this stuff off. But what does that mean for our distribution? What does it mean for people who are then putting out an article, even an article they might have written some time ago, a film they might have made some time ago? Does it then become illegal to carry on distributing that? Does it become illegal for people to watch it? This is the area within this that we're kind of trying to navigate at the moment as independent filmmakers. What's happening now, if the prescription goes through and if the legality of it hasn't really been laid out for people, whether it's professional filmmakers or journalists like us, or whether it's for people who are on social media who might get in trouble by liking or sharing a post, like, because the law's going to be unclear to people, it means that people are going to have to start self-censoring. And that's the situation which we're currently going to find ourselves in come this weekend. If it looks like the vote's going to go before Parliament, if it looks like Palestine Action going to become a proscribed group, that doesn't mean that our film becomes illegal, because our film is an independent documentary. But what it means is we have to then take a decision. Could our film be read as supportive of that movement? And if we feel that there's a potential for that to happen, then we have no choice but to self-censor, to take the film down and to stop distributing it. And for me, that's quite an insidious culture that could be developing, where filmmakers and journalists, rather than the state overtly coming out and banning the film, they're putting the pressure on filmmakers, journalists, writers to self-censor or face legal consequences.
Certainly, I mean, this is going to have very direct consequences on, as you would have said, on the actual film being distributed more broadly, as we've seen from the money of the kind of speculatory remarks that you've made there. Is there any kind of specific impacts that you've already kind of prepared for with regards to how the film's being put out?
It was actually, we were at a screening at the Old Spotted Dog in Clapton, and it was just before the screening started, we got the news. And so since then, we've had a time to think about it. We've been advised to carry on with the screenings as usual, because nothing has happened right now. But what we did do was we moved the digital release of the film forward by a few months. Initially, the digital release was going to be in September. We were going to have a big cinema run nationwide, which was going to start at the Rich Mix, and hopefully will still start at the Rich Mix in East London, and then would go from there to Bradford, to Brighton, to Birmingham, multiple screenings in Liverpool, Ireland, Canterbury, Edinburgh, Glasgow, and a load more dates were going to be added, and then the digital release was going to happen. But what we did was we brought the digital screening forward so that people can watch it now, just in case. And we've also let community groups use the film and do their own screenings before Monday, basically. So there's, 20 to 30 screenings happening within the UK and internationally, out of solidarity to PA, to us, and to the film.
Yeah, I mean, we don't know what's going to happen. We've been taking a lot of legal advice. The film was produced as in the way that we always produce our films. It was produced legally. It was produced legitimately. It was produced with ethics. It was produced totally within the law. So we want the distribution of the film to go the same way. If the prescription comes in, we still don't quite know. You see, it's like we've been speaking to various kind of like lawyers, barristers, and they're telling us that this is unprecedented. That a non-violent protest group is facing this kind of prescription. It's unprecedented. So then, what does that mean for an independent film on that issue? We're still trying to navigate that, so we're preparing for everything. We're, like Hanan says, we brought the release of the film forward. We want as many people to see it as possible. If we can no longer distribute it after Monday, we can no longer distribute it after Monday. That's that. It means that this film we can't distribute it in other countries either. So if it does continue to live a life elsewhere, you'd be able to see it everywhere in the world but the UK, and even then it wouldn't be us being even allowed to distribute it to those countries. And this is not something that we've ever experienced in this country. It's something we've experienced it when, like, probably the closest parallel we could probably find is when we were receiving footage from garment workers in Cambodia who were trying to organize in the workplace, who were filming abuses of their rights in the workplace, in the factories. And an organization was getting this footage to us so we could then cut videos and put these videos out. And in that case, the government in Cambodia was, would class this as illegal activity. Likewise, in Bangladesh, the government there would class us making a film for Al Jazeera, for a broadcaster, but making a film about the at the time illegal trade union movement. Right, the government would not be allowed that. We'd have to be for us to now be experiencing this same kind of these same concerns here in the UK. It's like, I wouldn't say it's something that we never expected to happen, but I think the speed at which it's happening should be of concern to everyone who works in the press, who works in documentary, who works in journalism or writing, or even in the arts.
Over the years, we've been, so many countries that we've filmed in, there's always been a push to stop us from what we were making, whether that was we were being followed by the police, secret police, army, gangsters that happened to us in Bangladesh when we were filming in the Bihari refugee camps. And it's always to stop what we're making. But this is quite a unique position we're in now, where we've actually made it, and now we're being stopped from showing it or distributing it, whether that's here in the UK or whether that's internationally. And it is a cause for real concern. It's a cause for concern for anyone who believes in, freedom of speech and freedom of expression.
I mean, that is very true. I think that with the discussions around freedom of speech that we've had in recent times have been very kind of myopic in their discussion of things like on the internet in terms of service. And we haven't really grasped with what would happen in the reality where the government itself, the people who are the real arbiters of what it counts as being acceptable speech or not in terms of the law, have been able to curtail not only direct action itself, but also those reporting on the importance of direct action in the face of what we are, in our opinions, would be state overreach. Of course, the public don't seem to see things the same way. Have the public, in terms of the announcement of what you've been doing in the film that you've been announcing so far, and obviously we will be screening very soon, what's the public reaction been to what you've undertaken here?
That's the heartwarming thing from all of this, is the outpouring of support from members of the public. We're getting, I would say we've received thousands of messages over the last few days. People are really supporting the film, supporting us. People really wanting the film to have its proper release, to be able to watch it in a cinema. We've had loads of people, so many people just coming forward and saying, they want to support the film by supporting the crowdfund campaign, support the film by buying it, and organizing screenings. And like, we've had lots of messages from people. Like, even if the government get their way with this one, you guys make sure you come back with something strong next time, and you will do. So that's been really nice and really been uplifting for us during these dark moments, to see that type of support from people that we don't know, just members of the public, and they're people from all over the world.
I think this is something quite specific to Palestine Action in terms of direct action groups. So, like, the way that they're represented in the film, I think in our experience, like, as we've been making the film, when we're talking to people about it, there isn't the same public frustration and anger directed at them as there is to some other direct action protest groups. And like, my reading of that is because Palestine Action, they don't mess with the public. Do you know what I mean? They're not stopping someone from getting to work unless they're working at arms factory. They're not going after like paintings. They're not going after the London Marathon. When people do know about, people generally don't even know that much about what they're doing, because it's kind of kept off. They have been a successful organization for impacting the supply of weapons, but they're doing it actually at the source. They're not. They're thinking like, how can they strategically do what they can to stop the flow of weapons. Now, when you say that, give that to a member of the public, and you say, what do you think about this? Generally speaking, unless there's someone that's really into the kind of ongoing conflicts, they come down on the side of, well, yeah, that sounds pretty good. Like, we'd rather that these weapons aren't coming from the UK. It's very different to like when we're talking about other kind of direct action groups where there can be a lot of animosity. Like, why are they targeting us? Why are they messing with our life? Why are they messing with our kind of us trying to get to work, us trying to get about our life? So I think because of that, we found that I'm surprised about how little trolling there's been of the film online. There's maybe like one post out of a dozen or so that was getting trolled. The rest of the time, I've been surprised by the incredibly positive response that there's been to what's gone out there so far.
Hopefully, things don't go the way that Yvette Cooper wants it to go, and people do get to watch this film. And I think by releasing it early, all it's done is just brought the excitement that there is for the film, which means that lots of people are really interested in going to the cinema to watch it, because that's the thing that we did with this film, because it's kind of like shot first person, quite a lot of it, and that's the body cam footage that PA provided to us, and this is all footage just to make clear, all of the material that they gave us was material that was already out there, whether that's on YouTube, Twitch, TikTok, Instagram. It was all material that members of the public who follow them especially have already seen. And what we done is, with the film, we wanted it to be a real cinematic experience. And even though people are watching it at home now, what we really wanted is for them to be able to watch it in the cinemas. We'd booked out multiplex cinemas, not even art house cinemas. We wanted like the biggest screens possible for this film because it was going to be an experience. And hopefully that will still happen.
If you want to see To Kill a War Machine, there'll be various screenings at venues across the country in the coming days, whilst it's still legal. These are some of them. On the 27th of June at Cliftonville in Margate, that's the 101 Social at 6:30. On the 28th of June, there'll be in Birmingham, the Old Printworks at 5 p.m. In London, at Palestine House at 7:30. In Bradford at the Kirkgate Community Centre between 6 and 8. Sheffield at the Broomhall Centre at 5:30 p.m. And Pembrokeshire in the Bloomfield Community Centre at Narberth at 2 p.m. There's also on the 29th of June in Glasgow at GMAC from 4 till 6. In London at the Advocacy Academy in Brixton at 7 p.m. And at the Oxford Cinema, formerly the Odeon, at 8 p.m. And the Art Studio in Preston at 11 a.m. And also on the 30th of June and the Newcastle location near Westgate Road to be confirmed at 7 p.m. as well. There will also be international showings, long beyond the reach of the crooked arm of the Home Secretary. Catch the film in Norway, Lisbon, Vienna, Berlin and Belgium, as well as at multiple screenings in Australia and in the USA. And we'll try and get the link to the film online and all of the dates that you can find in the description as well. Stephen, this is obviously a very, very important film, but also very, very important context of what might happen in terms of the discourse around how we oppose Israel's genocide moving forward. But what's your take?
Well, look, I watched that film today to prepare for the show tonight, and I'm not ashamed to say that there were points at which I was like moved to tears by the courage, the conviction, and the clarity of the activists who do direct actions through Palestine Action in order to stop the killing of people in Gaza, or at least to make it really, really expensive. Now, there's one scene that we didn't show in the piece of a young man standing on the roof of a factory in Birmingham, waving a Palestinian flag after having broken in. And in an interview, he just talks about a sense of calmness that he felt in that moment. And that's the calmness of being so assured that what you're doing is right and what you're doing is everything that you can do to stop something worse happening somewhere else. And what's happening now is that the government is doing everything it can do to ensure that something worse happens somewhere else. They're doing everything that they can do to make it cheap for arms companies in the UK, amongst them Elbit, but other ones as well, to make money off of the slaughter of Palestinians in Gaza. And I think that Palestine Action is so courageous, so brave. I wish that I had the courage to act on their behalf. I don't. But I am wondering increasingly whether I have the courage in my own personal capacity to break the law if they are prescribed. And I know a lot of people will be thinking the same. And the reason that I feel so strongly about this is because the acts of this government in attempting to prescribe a peaceful, albeit direct action, but a nonetheless non-violent protest organization, Palestine Action, an organization that has never threatened violence to any human being. The idea that they're going to prescribe them as a terrorist organization means that they are also clamping down on your rights, Helena, my rights, the rights of every single person in the audience watching this show. That is the right to have an opinion about what people are doing and to express it vocally if you support them. They clamp down on my rights and your rights, Helena, as journalists, because it means that we cannot offer an analysis that could be construed by someone out there to be supportive of Palestine Action, let alone an analysis in which we directly support Palestine Action post-prescription. And why is the government doing this? Why are they clamping down on the rights of human beings? Well, they're doing it to protect objects, things, not just any objects and not just any things, the kinds of objects and things that can be used to kill other people. The government is essentially saying it is more important to us that objects, the products of weapons firms, the products of factories, factories, things that have no minds, no souls, nothing. It's more important to us that they're protected than that your right to express yourself vocally or in any other way about an organization which you think is acting for the best, is acting in the best and bravest way they can. They're determined to put those objects above you. And what I don't understand, Helena, is where are the free speech warriors? Where is Toby Young? Where are all the GB News people? Why aren't they coming out and saying, actually, this is outrageous. This is a government overstep, because they are clamping down on this fundamental right that we have as Brits to speak our mind. You know, this is a form of state violence. You know, everyone talks about, the violence of Palestine Action, smashing up windows and breaking computers, whatever. This is the violence of the state, because what they're doing is they're saying, shut your mouth or go to jail. Shut your mouth if you support them or get huge fines. Shut your mouth if you support them or get prosecuted under the Terrorism Act, become branded a terrorist. That is far more violent, far more aggressive than anything that Palestine Action has ever done. And these people on the right who are revealing themselves to be fucking hypocrites should be out there shouting this from the rooftops, because this is a fundamental abuse of state power in order to oppress us who have political opinions, and it will be used to oppress other people who have political opinions too. So yeah, Toby Young, GB News, where the fuck are you?
You're so right. You're so right. It drives me round the bend hearing these free speech warriors when their conception of free speech, their entire conception of free speech is essentially entirely comprised by, oh, well, I said a bad word and I got banned on Twitter, right? It is people who don't read the terms of service and then will violate the terms of service and get their account banned or whatever, or a private institution will disinvite somebody with unsavory opinions that the patrons of that private institution don't want to hear the opinions of, right? And that private individual will be disinvited or whatever. This is an absolute damning indictment on free speech as far as these people are concerned, when in reality, the crux, the fulcrum on which free speech as a concept resides is about state power, as you rightly point out. It is the violence of the state to be able to shut you up for the things that you say, right? To actually take away your civil freedoms. It's nothing to do with whether or not you can have a Twitter account or you can go and talk about how much you hate trans people at a university. It's about whether the state can enact the reduction and the retraction of your civil liberties because of your opinions. And as you said, I went to the Free Speech Union's Twitter account the day that this was announced. And what were they talking about? Nonsense about people needing to hear opinions they don't like at universities. Because fundamentally, free speech to these people was never about a principle. It was never about like utility or it was a means to an end for these people. They wanted to say slurs. People got mad at them for saying slurs. And so they kicked up a fuss about it. And now we have a real, genuine, existential free speech issue at the doors of everyone in this country. Silence, crickets from these people. And one thing I will add as well is the mind-bending, the space-time continuum warping hypocrisy of Sir Keir Starmer KC, who in 2003, I believe it was, defended somebody who did something very, very similar to prevent military jets from going to Iraq, the illegal war in Iraq. I wonder what 2003 Keir Starmer would say about 2025 Keir Starmer. I wonder how disappointed and disgusted he would be in what is happening under Keir Starmer's government right now, and what he is doing, not just in his facilitation and his complicity in Israel's genocide and war crimes in Gaza, but on his draconian violation of civil rights for people who he used to defend, right? The man who gave us work for free to the people on the McLeibel trial, somebody who had genuine principles against state overreach when he was going around trying to defend people who are on death row, like genuinely bad people, but who fundamentally had civil rights that he wanted to protect, is now in government, in power, what he always wanted to be, right? The guy who got to go around all the fancy conferences, revoking those people's rights unilaterally. I wonder how disappointed and how completely disgusted Keir Starmer of yesteryear would be disgusted by Keir Starmer now. Shows you how power corrupts, doesn't it?